Hello, welcome back to All Gathered Up, the show that runs parallel with the Great British Sewing Bee, and it looks into all the skills and techniques that may pop up during an episode. And we can do that because we've got way more time than the Sewing Bee itself has. And as you know, you fans keep coming back and back, you know by now. But if you don't know, we can do it and go into all that depth because we have Carol Elaine, Master Tailor Couturier, with us. Hello, Carol. Good to see you again.
Same here. Same
Lovely.
here. How are you doing,
I'm
Chris?
good. Week 3 already. That it's like we've waited a whole year. We're now into the swing of it, and we're good to go, aren't we? We press record, and you're a one take wonder.
Here we. Oh, thank you. Well, it's going fast. The
Isn't
weeks
it
are
just?
flying by.
But what is lovely to see is
Mm.
all the messages. Now, I was overwhelmed with the amount of comments on week two's video alone. It
Mm.
seems like a whole new batch of audience people have found us. And if that is you that has just found us, welcome along. But it's been lovely to see everyone's comments, hasn't it?
Oh, it's just so reassuring, and the conversation is getting bigger and bigger. And I really feel like that the goal is we're reaching that goal. We wanted to help people technically, and we wanted to add to what we thought was missing in the sewing bee,
Yeah.
and it's working, isn't it, Stuart?
Absolutely, and I saw you tapping away, and you've been commenting away to some of the messages.
Mm.
It's lovely, and it keeps that
Mm.
conversation going. Each week after each show, I do a little post on YouTube asking if you've got any questions, and it could be questions you have about the show, maybe a technique that popped up and you've never grasped it, so you could ask that question. But don't be afraid to ask us questions on anything sewing related. Maybe you're working on something and you just can't get something right. Then use this opportunity to put that question in the comments, and then we'll put it to Carol and we'll help, won't we? Well, you'll help.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, of course. No, it's a good idea, Stuart, to talk about the projects that you're making at home. Why not?
Absolutely, because I've got a feeling there are going to be many, many, many people going out to buy the pattern, either the one of Pasha's trousers for the made to measure
Oh,
or
yes. Yes.
Elsa's amazing pleated trousers. I think there are going to be many people making them over the next couple of weeks, aren't there?
Yeah, they're light and they're summery, and it's a very breezy garment. It looks so comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think both of them are going to be popular. One is fitted through the waist and the hip, and then the other one is quite pleated, quite generous around the hip area. So yes,
And
two
and that's
different garments, but very useful for spring and summer.
and that's the beauty of the sewing bee. When they get it right, we're all inspired to make. And in
Mm.
turn, people are going out to buy fabric, go to local fabric shops, spend their money,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
create. And that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Totally. Yes. And then make it well so that it lasts. And now
Yes.
you're talking about investment pieces and pieces that nobody else has. So you're making your own unique fashion.
So you can see the focus there. We're on week 3, holiday week. As we were watching, Carol goes, "Oh, we're going to do that. We're going to do that." And yes, bias binding came up. Difficult in that 2.5 hour challenge. They had to cut their tablecloth up, think of all those
Mm.
intricate pattern placements, and then also had to make binding too. But that binding, I think, was non. They didn't want that to show, did they? That was hidden. So Carol said we'll talk about bias binding and then
That's
difficult
it.
fabrics and the walking
Mhm.
foot, because they had to use quite difficult fabric in the transformation challenge, didn't they, Carol?
That's right. Netting and rope and yeah, tricky, sticky fabrics. So the walking foot is your friend when you're working with fabrics like that, because they're not going to go under the presser foot of your normal domestic machine unless you have this foot that hops. And we're going to talk about that.
Well,
And
let's
I
go.
think
Let's go into
I
it.
have a picture of
Yeah,
it.
let's start then with the difficult fabric. I suppose difficult fabric just means heavier fabric, or is it difficult because of the finish of the fabric? What can that mean in terms difficult fabric?
Oh, so many different things. I mean, it can be difficult to handle. You know, it can be really cumbersome to just cope with,
Okay.
you know, like a drapery fabric or something really thick, or it can be sticky, it can be slippery, it can be leather, it can be, you know, have a knit content in it that you need your ballpoint needles. So like all of these things that you're sewing, you've got to work with your tension, your needle size, your choice of thread. So with a difficult fabric, then all those other things come into play.
And we touched on needles last week, so actually it would be nice to recap that if you didn't watch last week's episode. There's never a problem of repeating stuff because people come in and watch the show and come out at different points. So it'll be good to talk about needles again anyway, because I've found using specific needles or specific style needles or specific size needles can make all the difference, can't it?
Yes, and I still have to order some of your top stitching needles because I really want to try
Oh,
those.
you don't need to order them. I'll send you some in the post. Right.
Oh, well, there you go. You see, bonus.
Let's go for it. What are we going to do? Take it away, Carol.
All right. So shall we go to the camera and I'll show
Yeah.
you some things about difficult
All right.
fabrics.
I shall push a button. Here we go.
Glasses on. Right. Everybody see this. I don't have a lot of things around the studio in this category, but the one thing I do have is canvas. And this is very stiff fabric. You can see, got a life of its own. So I thought, well, let's say we were making a bag.
Okay.
A bag with a drawstring,
Oh,
and a
right.
bag with sides.
Yeah, like the proper transformation round. Yeah.
Yeah, like proper transformation. And I thought of two things, well, three things really. One of the things that somebody had trouble with. Now, this is the top of my bag, and this is the casing. Now, one of the contestants had a heck of a time threading the rope through after his bag had been finished. Right? Do you remember that, Stuart?
It was Marcus. Sadly didn't get it all tucked in time. So it was hanging out, wasn't it? The blue rope was hanging out.
Yes, that's right. So let's say this is your canvas and you're going to have drawstring on both sides, okay? The bag comes up and you're going to have opposite strings gathered in.
Yeah.
This might seem very obvious to you, but here's my rope. It's going to be difficult to feed through depending on the size of the casing. So why not just take your rope and set it into the fold and pin it along the way so that it can't drop out. And then this is also a good gauge for deciding how thick your casing should be. Then go ahead and stitch that. Take your pins away, and the rope is already in. So it will, you know, it feeds then freely. Okay? That might seem obvious, but it'll save you some time in the long run, and it'll save that panic at the end with the safety pin and trying to thread it through.
Brilliant.
So you can actually sew your rope in first, sew the casing with the rope already in it. Okay? And then you don't have to feed it. The other thing I saw somebody struggling with was an eyelet.
Oh, yes.
And I thought...
We've tried those before, haven't we? Those machines.
Yeah, those machines. So I thought, well, let's make a fabric eyelet.
Oh, cool.
Let's just do that. So this is a rather large eyelet, but the rope might be large. You can always make it smaller. But in order so that everyone can see it, what I've done is I've just taken a patch. This is a fusible canvas. I've sewn a circle, okay? This is in orange there.
Yeah.
Then I've cut out everything except a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I've clipped the curve, right?
Yeah.
Everybody see that? Now, all that's left to do is to feed that all through to the other side.
To your wrong side, yeah.
To your wrong side. Give it a stretch. And then because this is a fusible canvas, all you need to do is iron that down. Okay? And then on the right side, you have
look at
a lined circle. See there? And then let's say that the rope is going to feature. I know this is way too big.
The principle.
But you get,
absolutely.
you get the idea.
Indeed.
Then what you can do is you can then seam this rope into the gusset at the bottom. That would be on the, just seam it in so that it's very sturdy. And there was a lot of instability with some of the transformation, some of the rucksacks, you know, it didn't actually hold up. It wasn't fixed like it could have been. So that's one thing you can do by just, after that's all set, that just seam it in when you complete your bag, and then it's never going to go anywhere. Okay, so that's another thing. And the third thing is we're going to talk about the walking foot. And the lovely thing about the walking foot is I've had these two odd bits of leather lying around, and I've appliqued the leather side and the suede side using the walking foot.
Oh my Lord. So the leather is on the canvas, and then the suede is on the leather on the canvas.
That's right.
Girl.
So these sections, I'm actually sewing through 3 layers of difficult fabrics. Yeah. You know, the leather side, the canvas, and then the suede side. And this would be very tricky to do without this walking foot.
Okay.
Now, you believe you've got a picture of a walking foot?
I have. I'm just going to go back to our first screen. And, oh, look at your red dress thing in the background there.
Oh,
look at that, everyone.
This goes home tomorrow. This is a grandmother of the bride.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, we didn't see that at the beginning because you were obviously closer up. Now, since you're at the sewing machine,
there it is.
Right? Everybody, this is a presser foot. This is what will go on your domestic machine, and this is what helps sew multiple layers of fabric. Yeah.
Yes, or difficult fabrics.
Okay.
Slippery fabrics, sticky fabric like suede, like leather, certain felts, fur.
Okay.
Boucle. Yeah. And what it does is, there's a set of leather teeth.
Let's make that bigger. I'm going to cover myself up.
Yeah. That's perfect.
We don't need to see
That's
me.
a really good close-up. Okay. So you see the presser foot, the silver bit on the bottom, the bottom, yes. Yeah. There it is. That's the normal press. That's what slides on the fabric. Okay. Then above that, you've got this set of plastic teeth. Okay. Now that works with the feed dog of the machine. And what it does is it hops. And that's why you have such a large mechanism behind it. Because that whole thing is making this go in a circular motion.
I get you.
And grabbing onto the fabric and pulling it through. And it's pulling it through. And it's working in consort with your feed dog of your machine.
So, because that's the issue. I know this. Let's shrink that back down again. Oh, well, let's delete that. I use one of these in quilting. Because remember, in quilting, we've got our bottom fabric. We've got our wadding in the middle. And then we've got our piecing on the top. So we've got our quilt sandwich of 3 layers. And if I don't use a walking foot, when I'm quilting, the layers come out of sync. And then by the time my foot gets to the end, I've got like a huge tsunami and I end up with a pleat or a pucker because they're out of sync. So you're saying that that top plastic teeth bites down and pulls the fabric through at the same time then, is it?
Yeah, and it goes down and makes a stitch and then it comes up. And when it comes up, the fabric moves along a little bit. So it's got that breathing space.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So in the breathing space, your 3 layers of fabric are allowed to pass through, move along so that the next stitch, otherwise everything just sort of smashes on top of each other. And like you said, you get that tsunami and it starts to pucker.
Yeah.
And
it's so frustrating.
This way, everything stays in that sandwich. And it just hops along.
And it's equal. There's nothing going racing off. Whereas if you used a normal foot, you're just going to have your presser foot here, and the feed dogs are pulling it
Yeah.
through, but the top just gets, as you say, smushed and pressed, doesn't it?
Yes, the feed dog wants to move. The fabric doesn't want to move.
Yeah.
It's jammed.
So,
So this way, by just
so are we going to see
go
this in
ahead.
action now? Have you got this on your machine? Because you don't
Well,
use this on your actual industrial machine, do you?
no, I don't. And I thought I'd try something.
Oh,
I don't know if this is going to work, but this is what the
okay.
challenges are about, right?
Yeah,
We don't
absolutely.
know if it's going to work. So
Let's.
I'm going to I'm going to sew a pocket on this. Now let's see if we can get this machine.
Because I suppose as well, you don't use your domestic machine much, do you? Or do you?
Hardly at all.
Oh,
No, I hardly use it at all. I would use it if I needed to zigzag something.
okay.
Because we don't zigzag on our
Right, viewers.
industrial.
There's the presser foot. Obviously, if you've
Yep.
got a presser foot, you know this. But if you don't have a presser foot, it's a valuable, well, invaluable tool. It's probably around the cheapest presser feet are normally about 40, 50 quid, and they can go up.
Yes.
So it is an investment for
Yeah.
sure.
It definitely is an investment, and it makes things so easy. And it might make this difficult. I have no idea. But I talk about difficult fabrics. I'm going to sew a pocket on, and the pocket is made of bubble wrap.
Oh Lord, Karen.
I know.
Well, why
What
not?
for, right?
It could
What
come up.
for?
It could come up in the transformation challenge in that
You never
paraphernalia that they had. Okay.
Now the only thing is I'm afraid. Well, I'm not afraid, but what if it starts popping? You know.
Oh, well, it will.
I know. So it might, and it might not. But look at here. Okay.
I can see it jumping up and down.
Yeah. I thought this would be really interesting to show people how this might work. And this is part of a difficult fabric. You see how heavy this is?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you've got a domestic machine with a free arm, all that has to go somewhere, doesn't it? So here we are. So the insanity continues. This is really quite wacky, but now you get the idea of
Yeah.
just how valuable this foot is.
I can see those white plastic teeth going up, coming down, and then as it combining with the presser, the feed dogs, they're pulling it through
A
equally.
feed dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm using a basting stitch. I'm using a larger needle. This is a 14. And I'm using regular sewing thread, but depending on what decoration you wanted this to look like, you might choose a heavier top stitching thread. So there we are. It worked.
And
A pocket made of.
I noticed you're not pulling it from behind either. You're avoiding that, aren't you?
No. Yes. Again, good reminder. Just let the tool do the work. And there is our pocket, our bubble wrap pocket.
Look at
So I know it's a bit wacky, but this is what we were talking about with the transformation challenge.
Absolutely.
And the raw materials that these people are given, honestly. So it's just try things. Why not? And conquer the difficult stuff. Now, should we have a little word about bias binding?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Where
So
am I?
bias
Oh,
binding.
you're back there. Okay, yeah.
Okay, bias binding is obviously it's cut on the bias. It's cut on 45-degree angle to the selvage or to the cross grain, and it's stretchy, and that's what allows us to manipulate it and work it around a curve.
Wow.
As it happens, I think there was a very light curve around the neckline of that top that they had to make. You cut your strips. I cut this 1.5 inches, and you join it. And when you join a bias strip, let's see if I can.
Yeah, I can see that. Brilliant.
You're joining it. You're joining it on the straight of the grain. See, that doesn't stretch at all, unlike the finished strip. So you join it, and then this gets pressed open. And then here's how I make my bias binding. I don't use one of those gadgets, right?
Okay.
The first thing I do, there's my 1.5 inches. I press it in half.
Okay.
Now I've got my midway line. So that's the first thing I do. And then I open it up so that I can see that pressing line just here. And then I simply press each side back in till it meets that midsection. and then I turn it around. And there it is. Now, this you can use to finish something off the way, I forgot what her name was. She actually did this. She finished her neckline like this by wrapping it around, and they called her up on it. They said, we didn't want that.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What they wanted was they wanted you to use the bias binding like this,
So
how I
that's,
finished it off.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you would simply would open up one of those edges and you would sew it on to the edge of your neckline or whatever
On the front, yeah.
on the front, on the top side.
Yeah.
And then I'll get a couple of pins here. So let's pretend that these are stitching lines.
Yeah.
Just going to pin into that ditch that we pressed, and that would be pressed. This is how purchased bias binding looks.
Absolutely is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we've sewn that, and then you simply turn the whole thing round
And
to the wrong side, and then they would top stitch it just here on the edge, and that would come out on this
there.
edge.
Okay.
Is that clear?
It is, because that was one of the. I'm just going to come back to this camera. That would have been. Oh, let's get rid of that. That was going to be one of the questions I asked. How do you think that was written in the instructions? They would have said create bias binding, and it would have just said sew to the right side and fold over. That's all. It's not called a different type of binding, is it? It's just the way you sew it.
It's the way you sew it.
Okay.
You can either sandwich it in as a feature,
Yeah,
or you can undo one of the folds and use that as your seam allowance, and then turn the whole bit back around to the wrong side. And then you're top stitching the right side of the binding, and that's but it's on the wrong side. You're using the edge of that as a guide, and which is a little bit tricky. You have to have that perfectly straight, and your tension has to be absolutely spot on as well, so that when you turn around to the right side, the stitching line is clean and it's crisp, the right tension, and it's even.
So,
but who knows? You know, I have this question in my mind all the time. How is the direction worded?
yeah, because obviously there are. I think the decision. Did I write it down? Let's have a quick look on my notes for the pattern challenge. I know the binding was an issue. I think I got the impression that some purposely didn't follow the instructions because they wanted the binding to be seen. I think they made that directorial, artistic decision themselves. So I don't think it's that they didn't read the instructions right. I got the impression that some wanted to see the binding. And I can understand that as a designer point of view. But when you're following a pattern challenge, that obviously was an issue because they were called up on it, weren't they?
Yes. And if they just sandwiched it on top of the raw edge, then the neckline would have been too big. Oh, that seam would have been too big, because you're supposed to lose about 1/4 of an inch when you put on that bias binding.
Yeah.
And then you turn it back. And then I think I remember on the picture, they're supposed to meet in the middle.
Well, let's go to it, because I was just about to say, how are you going to do that V? Let's see what pictures I've got. This was someone with the binding on the show. I can't remember who that was. Yeah, you've got that at the bottom. What happens at the bottom there?
So it looks like it's crisscrossed over itself. Instead of just meeting in the middle, she's crossed over because she had extra fabric.
So actually, this was harder if she followed. Well, I say she. I can't remember who it was. So if they were to followed the pattern, then it would have been easier.
Yes, it would have. Well, it would have come out cleaner, and she wouldn't have had to make that extra, crossover, and then hope that bust seam matched at the side seam. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we've talked about bias binding before in previous episodes. So what I'll do, thank you for that, Carol, is I'll put them in the link below because they're all on your YouTube site, aren't
Yes,
they?
that's right. That's
And
right. We've done studies. Mm.
and because I remember, I think I remember one where you talked about binding, bias binding, and then I talked about binding, straight binding, because we use straight binding in quilting.
I remember. That's right. And I think I remember you talking about how to miter the corners
That's it. Yes.
when you
Oh,
bind a quilt. Yeah. Oh, that
love
looks
my
so
corner.
crisp. Ah,
And I think I did a little demo. So for once, I was able to do a demo. So I'll put that link in the description below because, as I say, we've been doing this. This is our 4th year now. So you just imagine how many demos Carol's done over those 4 years. 10 weeks, yeah, 40 demo, at least 40 demos. And so
yeah.
sometimes we've come up against, similar topics. So I'll put them all down and then you can watch different episodes of us talking about binding.
Good idea. Good idea. And hopefully, because we're dealing with different fabrics and different techniques, that it's not going to be as repetitive as I think.
No,
Hopefully,
no, not at all. Not
it's
at all.
it's all fresh. It's all a fresh approach to something new.
Yes, and though sometimes we don't often use techniques that often, so it's often sometimes it's a good refresher anyway. Oh yes, I'll remember that. So it's always good, I think. Now needle size. What did you have in your machine there for the canvas?
Yeah, I was using a 14. I probably could have used a 16. It's very thick and
Yeah.
it's got a treatment on it, which makes it almost a bit sticky. So I would say it's even harder than like a denim, heavy denim. So I probably could have used a 16, and then I should have used a heavier thread as well, maybe a 30.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
that would have been helpful. Top stitching thread, I don't think too necessary, but I think I should have used a stronger thread. But it's good to know because you try things, don't you? And you always make tests, and so it's
Oh,
good to know that you can get away with just a normal sewing thread with that. Actually, I think Gutermann would be perfect. A Gutermann sewing thread is quite good. Polyester core would be absolutely fine. But then you need to stress test it as well. And it could be that maybe you'd need to do one of our flat felled seams and double stitch it so that it's really
yeah.
sturdy, right? Yeah.
And just to give a little bit more clarification on needle sizes, I've just got a little picture here I'm just going to drop in. Again, I'll cover my face up. When Carol says 100 or, no, Carol says 14, 16, needle sizes of 2, they're metric and they're American numbers.
Yeah.
So, Carol, what did you say? A 14 did you use?
14 or 16. Yeah.
And on your needle, when you buy them, they'll have both. So you'll have 90, 14 or 116. And for example, some of them now, if I show, let's move this, my face. These only are actually now saying, can you? It's a bit small, but at the top there it says Jean's needles. It says I've got a regular assortment. I've got 90 and 100 there along the top.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's not showing, but some needle cases, it depends on the brand, will say 90-14. 90, it would say 90-14. So you've got the metric and then you've got the American imperial. That's the word I was looking for.
And Stuart, I can see the quilting size needle is a 70.
Yeah.
Now that's a very fine needle. That's what I use most of the time for couture work. I use a size 70s. Do you really use that size for your quilting?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. Because so I'll use a 70-10 when I'm doing my cotton piecing. When I've got two, I haven't got anything lying around. Have I got anything lying around? No. when I'm just using my simple patchwork cotton and I'm sewing two seams together, and I'll sew 70 because I'm using patchwork quilting cotton, 100% cotton.
Mm.
And I don't want a very big hole. I don't want my cotton being pierced with, because you're doing
Yeah.
lots of holes, aren't you? You see,
Yes.
because we'll use with piecing, we'll use a small stitch length too.
Ah, right.
But when I then go to quilt, remember there's the difference, isn't there? There's the piecing when you make your actual what we call a topper. And then once it's pieced together, we'll actually then quilt it. Remember I said at the beginning, our quilt sandwich will have our topper,
Yes.
our
Yes.
wadding, and then our base. I'm going
Yes.
through 3 layers of fabric. I'll
Hmm.
still continue to use the quilting needle because have I got one here? No, I haven't got one here. I should have had one. The quilting
Mm.
needle, like this, get my head
Yep.
out of the way. That says sharps, doesn't it?
Yes.
Stretch. This is good for lycra. Don't get that
Hmm.
confused with your ballpoint and jersey. But the quilting needle has been designed with a nice, really long point, so it can
Yeah.
go through 3 layers and still glide through.
Ah,
So
yes.
even though it's a small point,
Yeah.
being a
Diameter. Yeah.
70, it's been designed with a sort of a longer shaft so it can go through
Yes.
3 layers.
Right. So the taper is very long on
Yes,
the
yeah.
taper to the point is longer, so it can pass through
And the
those
same
three layers.
as, go on.
Yeah, and the middle one is quite thick, isn't it? This batting layer in the middle.
Yeah,
That's what,
yeah,
a good eighth of an inch thick? What
yeah,
is half a centimeter
yeah, yeah.
thick? Maybe thicker?
It depends on your preference of wadding for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why the quilting needle is really good when you actually are quilting. But remember, I said last week that I actually use the top stitching needle in general because you can see the top stitching is the ori. They haven't. Who's top
Do they
stitched?
have it on?
Yeah, they've got the top stitch is pale blue, 60.
Very
But
fine.
it's fine because it's going to go through probably quite a few layers, but it's got the
Mm.
really big eye. So I use the
Yeah.
top stitching needle anyway because it's fine and I like a fine needle, but it's got a really
Yeah.
big eye, easy to thread. Easy to thread. It's great.
I need that these days after a long day.
And then you've
Oh,
got the jeans needle, which ultimately is a thicker needle anyway. It's a 90, or you can get 100, or you can get 120. You can get you can buy because I just stock the regular assortment because you don't really need too many differences, 90 and 100. But you can buy a heavy pack of jeans needles that goes up to 120 or even 140 if you're going through really
yeah.
thick because
Yeah.
as you can imagine some leathers, if you're making those beautiful leather pouches for
Mm.
purses or knitting, the
Mm.
knitting
Mhm.
world, you can get some stunning leather pouches to keep all your knitting needles in, Carol.
Mm. I've got a colleague who's making shoes. Um, she's a fantastic embroiderer and beader and all that fine work, but she's just decided to go into shoes. So I'm going to go see her, and she's putting some things up on Instagram at the moment. It's just unbelievable how thick the leather is and the sole. These needles are going through the sole of the
Yeah,
shoe as well. Wow, that is some interesting equipment, I'll tell you.
it's completely different equipment, isn't it? Have you
Yeah,
seen it?
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
the
I'm going to, and
needles,
I'm really, yeah, I'm well. I've she's shown it. Like I said, there's some pictures on Instagram, and you just think that looks like Victorian tools, really, really
absolutely.
thick, muscular things, and
Yeah,
of course they have to be to pass
yeah.
through that heavy material.
Now, we talked just briefly there about patchwork. we've got a special guest next week, haven't we? We're going to be doing a little interview with Louisa. Tell us more, Carol. Tell us more.
So Louisa is, let's see, the sister of my brother-in-law, and Louisa and her family are incredibly creative, and she has a wonderful craft room in her home. And we did a test today, and I couldn't believe how tidy it was and how many different things she had to make just about anything. She's working on what you call a jelly roll rug at the
Yes,
moment.
love that.
Okay, but she's made her first quilt, and she's going to tell us all about
Oh,
who she
good.
was following on Instagram, how she bought the kit, and who she tunes into here in England. There's a quilter that she follows here in England, and this has
Wonderful.
all inspired her to make her own quilt.
Oh,
And she put a little video on Facebook. I saw it, and I said, you have to talk to Stuart,
oh,
because
lovely.
you two will have so much in common. And and this just puts something in common with our family, our interrelated family. So it's really cool. And
It,
Louise is lovely, and she's really looking forward to it.
it's gonna be lovely, and it's just something nice that we can
Yeah,
drop in a 7 or 8 minute
yeah.
interview where we chat about the skill, about the processes, and celebrate those processes, because we talk about couture work, but couture sewing, dressmaking, patchworking, it's all the same thing. It's someone putting fabric together with
Yes.
a
Yeah.
machine or by hand, making something out of it that we just love, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what I like about this is the conversation just keeps getting larger and larger, and we're including more and more
Yeah.
people. So my area of work is very specialized, bespoke tailoring and couture work. But there's so much more to it, as you said. And what's happening this season, particularly, is the number of people that are contributing and asking questions and wanting to get involved and wanting to be part of that conversation is just growing,
Isn't
and
it?
that's exciting.
And talking about that
Mm.
conversation, let's go on to a question, because it will lead nicely back into the pattern challenge as well. So we put this up on YouTube. That's where you go each week after the show. I'll just say, drop your messages in here for a question for Carol, and we'll put them in the show at the end. And we've got this from Alison. She said, I really enjoyed this week's Sewing Bee. I have quite a few old textiles collected from charity shops over the years that I would like to repurpose. So I was excited about the first challenge, as was I, but then horrified at how much they rushed the challenge. I know. They reduced the time, Carol. What was the thinking
Yeah,
there? They reduced it
I
from
don't know.
3 hours or 3.5 hours to 2.5.
I don't know. I don't understand why. I don't get it. What's the point, really? What's the point
Indeed,
in
I
rushing?
couldn't
And then
understand the point.
everything is rushed. And I remember, Stuart, somebody said, I don't know who said it. She said, this is the third week, and this is the first time I finished anything.
I know.
This is the first, so
It's
nothing's getting done.
no.
And this is really
And
heartbreaking.
it's heartbreaking and frustrating, because it's frustrating us. No doubt it's frustrating the sewers, because they're going to start questioning their own ability as well, aren't they? That they
Yes.
can't finish anything. So I
Yeah.
don't know why. Because a tablecloth still has to be cut up, like blank fabric has to be cut up. But because they
Yeah.
were asking them for pattern placement, we want to see how clever you are, where you choose the embroidery. You would want that extra half hour alone for that job, to sit and go, where am I going to put this? But they took that half hour away, and gave them 2.5.
Yeah, it's not fair on two facets, I think. The first one is they're rushing them, so they're just going to choose something and then sew it up, and then they're going to be called out because they're going to be told,
Yeah,
don't really like where you place things.
yeah,
Well,
I-
it's just a rush job. The second thing is, this isn't like fabric that you just fold in half and you lay it out on your table and you cut two of everything. This is completely different. And the tablecloth is not a small piece of fabric, is it? So you saw people cutting on the floor, and you saw people not being able to get the whole
yeah.
tablecloth on their work table. So they were just, they were shifting it around. It's just,
I know.
it's
Yeah.
Ah,
And as Alison then
not
goes
the
on
way
to
to
say,
work.
Alison goes on to say, it just seemed criminal to hack those beautiful embroideries in the name of a speed challenge. Well, I know, and it wasn't even a speed challenge. That was the balmy thing about it, Alison. Anyway, she says, my question was really, how might you think through reworking a textile? Any tips on getting good results and on thinking about pattern placement? I would have loved to see them break it down a bit more. Indeed. Well, hopefully
Oh,
we can try and do that in a discussion. So you've got a massive tablecloth, Karen. Carol,
yeah.
how do you that? What are the next steps? I presume everyone's going to be different, aren't they?
I think so. And I would say, look at the garment and the component parts of it. Do you have any very large pieces that you can take some of the larger motif and place it? Do you have a scalloped decorative edge that you want to use as a hemline? That would be a very good place to start. Is the decoration, is it a small garment and the decoration is so large that it's going to take up the whole of your garment? Is that going to make sense? Is there a short sleeve or a long sleeve? Do you want symmetry? You have a lovely crochet top that you wore last week,
Yeah.
and you chose to have the pattern, the motif,
Out of sync
not
almost.
symmetrical, out
Yes.
of
Yeah.
sync, out of
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions to ask. I would say, if you're making a garment that has a uninterrupted front, that would be a place to concentrate a larger piece of a larger motif on. If you've got smaller bits like a yoke or a collar or a pocket, then you're going to want to take the smaller motifs, you see, um, or cut them out and applique them on in a different way. I would say, look at the project, look at your component parts to the garment that you're making, and then what do you like? How do you want to self-express it? Do you want it symmetrical, or do you want it, a little bit out of balance? So there is a lot to think about.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
process should be an enjoyable, slow one. Now just imagine trying to do that in what, half an hour so you can sew it together. It's yeah.
It's
It's
a,
what
it's a,
yeah.
yeah,
It's a big
it's
task.
irrational.
Now
Yeah.
many of those questions that you just came up were exactly the same questions that I asked myself when I made mine last year. Now, if you've seen this already, I'm sorry. I'm going to bore you again with it. But I had a tablecloth. Let's go to this. That I had found in my granddad's house
Oh,
when we were going through everything. Found this tablecloth and went, oh my word. It was a huge tablecloth, for a classic long table that had all the pull-out sections that at least 10 people could sit around. So I had plenty of fabric there. I dyed it myself with my lavender and blue, so that's dyed with woad. And you can see there already, there's me holding it up, how big it is. But you can
yeah,
see all along the edge this specific motif. So I
yeah.
kind of knew straight away that that motif had to be used somewhere, but where? But like you said, oh, right. So you've got to think of the size of that. So I just wrote it down on my notes, right? That could be used somewhere. I also, let's have another look. We've got another picture there. You can see that motif going up the side,
Yes.
and then it's going to carry on there. So I knew that was going to be in
And
it
this,
somewhere. And let's have a look. You can see.
oh, that's
Can you
so
see
beautiful.
that, a close-up one?
Yeah.
Always get rid of me. Where's me? There. Look at that.
Oh, that's stunning.
And then you've
Oh,
got this beautiful, so you've got this lace work there, but then look at this lovely embroidery sort of work too. And that was going up the shirt. So I knew I wanted that somewhere. Now I was doing a shirt, so I just thought I'll have that as on the front. And if I show you this picture, there you go. You can now see.
oh,
So I kept all that embroidery for my fronts, my front left and my
nice.
front
Yeah.
right. And then
Yeah.
remember that lace work. and that big sort of motif, I put it,
That's beautiful
yeah,
there.
one there, and then coming down the middle of the sleeve. And
Yeah.
then
Nice.
I don't know whether I've got a back shot, but on the back I put that big motif bit slap bang in the
Oh,
middle,
nice.
but low down.
Nice.
And then the
And you're
cuffs,
wearing this,
the
I was going to
cuffs,
say you're wearing this out, right, Stuart? You're not tucking this shirt in, you're
no,
wearing it outside.
absolutely,
So
yes.
let me
Yeah,
make sure.
because you can see the other embroidered bit there and the other embroidered bit there. So you're right. You're looking at where to place and balance as well. And it was difficult. Now I didn't just then guess and lay my pattern pieces down. I actually tried to do a bit more technical. And this,
Mhm.
Alison, you might want to do is take pictures of it, of the fabric, and if you've got the computer facilities, go into
Ah,
Photoshop
yes.
and
Yeah.
cut it out and or almost just have a crude. So I in Photoshop I had a crude drawing of my shirt, so like that, little collar like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I just kept cutting up the picture. And I thought, right, I'll place that there, and then I put and I thought, another one there and another one there, and you kind of made a like a Frankenstein's monster version, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Oh,
then you
fun.
can kind of look back and go, I think that will work, and then I was then brave and then started cutting stuff out. So that could be
That's the, yeah.
that could be another approach too, couldn't it?
Yeah. And then I was just looking, Stuart, you've got your button band,
Yeah,
all the way down the center front, and that's a smaller piece. And that has, a bit of detail all its own because it's got the buttons on it.
absolutely.
So, and then you've got a small collar. So these are the smaller pieces. You have a cuff, I see. And did you center something differently on the cuff?
So
Are you using are you using a border edge?
yeah, absolutely. Look at that. Let's
Ah,
make it
okay.
really bigger.
Yeah.
So, like
Yeah.
what they actually said in the sewing bee, didn't they? They said rather than hemming it, why don't you use the bottom of the tablecloth to save time? And not many of them did that, did they? But
No, they didn't.
there you go. Look,
No.
I'll make that even bigger. So you should be able to see there my cuff. There's no hemming there at all. It's using the edge of, and I think you might be able to see the edge of the cuff there that I used. So it looks a bit
Yeah.
thick there. I had to go slowly when I
Yes.
was sewing that, but it fits in still, and it looks like a. Can you remember Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen when he was doing changing
Yes,
rooms, and he would have
I do.
he
I
was quite
do.
renowned for his cuffs, wasn't he? So
Yeah.
I call that
Well,
my Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen cuffs, but it works, doesn't it?
so it does. You saved yourself some time with that, you don't have to cut a lining for the cuff, and it adds such
Yeah.
elegance to the finished sleeve, doesn't it? It's a beautiful shirt. It
Really
makes me
pleased
want
with it.
makes
Really
me want to
pleased with
do the
it.
same thing.
So
Mm.
I hope that let's get rid of that. So I hope that helps Alison and anyone else. Go on, go for it. Go and find because those tablecloths weren't being used. So I actually really like this challenge.
Mhm.
They've been in the cupboard for ages.
Mhm.
This modern era, perhaps we still sit down at a table, but we're not necessarily sitting down at a table and having dinner with a lovely lace tablecloth. We've got a fancy table or
Mhm.
an IKEA table, haven't we? A nice wood table that we want to show off or something.
That's it.
So they are often in drawers. So why not be inspired? Go and get a tablecloth. I went down to the local charity shop yesterday to have a hunt because I wanted to do another one, and they didn't have any. They're all out. So I reckon everyone's already beaten me to it.
Probably.
Let's
Oh, well, they'll come around again.
Let's have a look at what some of the sewers made, though, in the pattern challenge. And let's look at their tablecloth cut up. Let's go to, where are we? Let's look at the sample first. Carol, that was the sample. They called it
Very pretty.
a summer blouse, didn't they?
Yeah, very pretty. I think when I saw that, I thought, what a useful garment. Comfortable, really colorful. It says summer when you look at it. Yeah, it's very pretty, and I love the border at the bottom.
Beautifully
Mm.
done, simply done. And then let's
Oh,
take a look at all of them there. That's the
mm.
10 sewers. And when you look at it from a distance like that, they actually all look very nice, don't they?
They look very pretty indeed. Yes, all riding up a bit at the top. In the front, they're all riding up.
Yes. So
There's no darting or
explain
anything.
what's going on there, Carol. What is that issue?
Well, it's riding up because the front of this mannequin has more length because of the bust than the back.
Right.
So the front at the top needs more length. Um, and you would get that if you had a bust start in the side, or if you, yeah, rebalance the pattern so that there was maybe a dip in the front, or more length up at the top, that seam that goes across the upper bust. But that's it. There's just not enough length in the pattern.
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
So when we come to the winners, because there was joint winners because the judges couldn't decide. They obviously they were exactly the same. They were just too good. But let's look at the joint winners and put them side by side. So there's Luke, and they were fabulous. And there's
Yeah.
Ailsa.
Huh.
The judges couldn't decide between them. But I'm thinking, well, actually, is one riding more than the other? So could you say that Ailsa's may have pipped the post if you were really, really going to the nitty gritty, or not?
It's interesting. Because it looks like Elsa used the scalloped for her hem, where Luke maybe hemmed it by machine. Am I seeing that
I
correctly?
don't know. I haven't got a close up, so it would be difficult to
Okay.
tell. But yes, to a certain extent, let's try and zoom in even more on Ailsa's. It's hard to tell, but yes, it does look like there's a scallop there and a
Yes.
scallop there. So maybe
Yeah.
she didn't.
And I would say that that's probably a more interesting result because she was able to her
Yeah,
placement was such that she was able to incorporate the scalloped edge.
yeah.
And I would have thought that's probably gives her an edge, as it were, in the challenge.
But I
I
know,
didn't understand. I didn't understand why the judges weren't able to refine their opinion and look closely at it, at everything, and
I agree.
come up with come up with a winner.
Yes, it kind of
Uh,
frustrated me there, really. And it, if you're a judge,
mm,
isn't that the exciting thing? Oh my God, we've got two really brilliant pieces here. We're going to
yeah,
have to really get to the nitty gritty to see who's the best.
yeah,
And that would excite me as a judge because you're going to have to work really hard, aren't you?
yes. You have to really drill down and look at every technique, every result, and then you're giving the audience much more
Yeah.
information, right? You're teaching them something about polished finishes, I would think.
Let's come back to Alison with her question about pattern placement. Luke, they have these two lovely pieces here, which did really work, and this asymmetrical bit, sort of like the L shape, kind of works, doesn't
Mhm.
it? It's something
Oh, yes,
different.
definitely. Yeah, and it puts more decoration in the front of the garment, where Elsa's is a bit plainer
Yes.
on the center front. So
Um,
that could have been another criteria. That could have given Luke an edge. They could have said, really love this,
yes.
but they're both terrific, but we like the way Luke incorporated asymmetry into his design.
Spot on, absolutely. And that then is the pip the poke. You're both really, really good, but there's something about this that just gets the edge.
Yeah,
Agree.
yeah.
Let's have Don. Now this is sorry to we like looking at Don's work, but we felt for him here. because I know this is something that I would do. When you're caught up in the 2.5 hours of it, you put your sleeve on wrong. Easily
Oh,
done. I know he was devastated, but how did you feel about that, Carol? You been there, done that before?
heartbroken. Yes, and it's a simple sleeve. It's just a simple rectangle. So, you know, it's an easy mistake to make. Um, I don't know if the patterns had notches, to direct
Yeah,
them, but he was the only one who got that wrong, wasn't he?
yeah.
But I have to say that I loved the placement of his garment the best of all. I really loved that because he put things on the shoulder,
Yeah.
instead of right either side of that binding. I
Yes.
just thought the mix of his placement was super.
Absolutely.
Darn, he's one of my favorite technicians. He's one of my favorites, and he's having some trouble, and that makes me sad.
Oh, it's that time. You can see it's under pressure, and I think did he say something last week? Have I got it here? Oh no, it was this week. He said during the made to measure, he now has to compromise now between getting it done and being perfect, and it must be heartbreaking as a sewer, mustn't it? Knowing that,
Yeah, it is.
and he understood that it's a competition. You've got to get a finished garment, and therefore that means perfection has to go out the window.
That's right. And I know he has a lot of experience. He sews a lot in a relaxed atmosphere, and now suddenly, the cameras are rolling, and there's a bit of at the wrong moments. I think this is edited in, but there seems to be a lot of goofing around as well from the
Oh, the
this
presenter Kiel,
this
yes, yeah.
the other presenter seems like
Ah,
a sock puppet when there's 10 minutes to go. It's not really the time and the place for that. But I'm feeling for the contestants
oh,
big time because I think the timings are
yeah.
irrational.
And this is where we always say, if you go on the sewing bee, full respect to you.
Thank you.
They're doing something completely that we could never do. They want to do more sewing, knowing full well it's going to be under speed and rushed, and they still do it. So hearts go out to them for sure. Good
Mm.
sports. Let's finish by looking at the made to measure round, because we've got to look at Ailsa's trousers again and
Yeah.
have a look. They had to make their challenge was to make a garment that would be seen on the French Riviera. It could be nostalgic glamour, comfortable, and chic. And then we
Mm.
saw, well, I saw two fabulous trousers. Let's just go straight into it. Where is it? Made to measure, and look at those trousers.
Oh, superb. Which works when you have a nice tall torso and a thin waist. That's a beautiful
Let's
design.
look at a close up.
That's so elegant. So elegant. A lot of freedom.
Talk to us about the engineering of this garment, Carol.
So these have reverse pleats that go into the center front. Looks
Okay.
like there's one on center, there's three, and then a side slant pocket and a waistband that looks like it buttons over to the side.
Yeah, it looks
Or
like
is
it's
there,
there.
is it there? Does the pocket open up and is that how
It
it's
looks
secured?
like it.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that could
But yeah,
be.
look at
Yes,
that center pleat, and then
that's the
that
center
one.
box, and then two on either side of the center box plate going into the center front.
It's
Um, Lovely choice of fabric. Love the freedom in this garment. And it's going to be, the pattern pieces are going to be quite wide. But once you get those pleats secured and in place, then you're just looking at making a normal pair of trousers, aren't you?
yeah.
Um, I don't know what the back looks like. I'm
Never
not
saw
sure
it.
if we
Never saw it. I
never
think she might
saw
have
the
done a
back.
twirl. I think there were some
Yeah. So
pleats in the back, if I remember rightly. I think there were a couple nice ones. Yeah, but this is
yeah.
where Ailsa, and full credit to her, because I think the sewers, I think they read the brief, which was to make a garment, and they probably thought, oh, that seems really simple for 4.5 hours, 4 hours. So let's go and make something else. Whereas Ailsa
Yeah.
nailed it right at the beginning. She said, okay, because the brief stated one garment, I'm just doing trousers. I want to make sure they're gorgeous and perfect.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So don't put any extra pressure on yourself. Just
Yeah,
excel with the brief as stated, and then just
yeah,
pick a real showpiece. So, in many ways, I mean, we had two pairs of trousers which were stunning,
yeah.
but these just had so much more impact
Let's go
because
to
of the volume.
Pasha's because they were stunning. But Pasha did two garments, and then that she spent the time on the trousers, struggled with the top, and then I think she said, "Okay, I can't do any more with this top. I'm going to go back and make sure the trousers are perfect." And the trousers
Yeah,
were phenomenal, weren't they?
beautiful. And I like the nostalgia, the old sailor's trousers. That design is really chic. It does come around every, spring, in a nautical way. But it it's a shame when she decided that the top wasn't going to work, that she just didn't put something else on her model and say, I'm just submitting the trousers.
I
Because
know.
then I thought we would have been in a dead heat. I think we would have had a tie
Yes,
again.
we would. Oh no, don't go there again. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's probably where they've submitted the designs in the production run up. So therefore, she submitted two garments, so she has to make two.
Yeah.
I presume that would be the rule because I would have got halfway through and gone, yeah, I'm not doing the top anymore. Concentrate on the trousers
Yes,
and
exactly.
pretend the
Yeah.
top was never in the design. But
Yes.
that's where I think it must be hard when you're entering a competition to have that faith in your ability. Right? They say to make a garment, so I'm just going to make a garment. Don't overthink it and make it something harder because, as we can see, Ailsa just did that. She saw the brief, make a garment, and she did it. Whereas the others did more, and then they all struggled. They all didn't
Yeah.
finish.
And this is week three when we're starting to see a separation of skill, and somebody, of course, one person has to go every week, but now is not the time to put pressure on yourself. It's week three. This is
Yeah,
a good opportunity to just kick back a little bit and just concentrate on the one garment that
yeah.
that you have to produce. Yeah, it's not, I don't think that's wise to put extra pressure on to try to
No,
impress at this point
and if
in
you
the
watch the
competition.
Sobe, they must watch the Sobe over years, like we do. I'd be if that was me going in. I'd be like, I'm doing one garment. I've
Yes,
seen the
yeah,
stress that they're under. I'm not. Why would I do
yeah,
two?
absolutely. Spot
Um,
on.
And let's, because who was it? Georgie. This was, yeah. So Georgie was one that, again, had a lovely idea. I've moved that out of the way. There we go. Did the skirt and the top, crochet top, and repurposed, I think, the crochet. But again, just run out of time on the top. And
Yeah.
as did Janet. Now, I just want to finish with Janet because I was gutted because
Oh, I know.
we lost Janet, and I really like Janet because she like not that one. Let's go to this one here. She's like, I'll do this. I'll wear this on the Riviera. She gave Patrick something, didn't
Yeah.
she? She gave him.
Of course. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
That to me is, yeah, that fulfilled the brief. Totally.
But maybe their
We,
fabric choice wasn't to their preference. I know it wasn't finished, but it was only two buttons that she didn't finish. And look at the close up of that binding.
yeah, beautifully done. Yeah. That's very much in style. It's a modern fabric. It's colorful. It's why not? I didn't understand that at all.
I
I
know, I
was
was
yeah,
gutted.
yeah,
And to be finished with just two buttons, and then others were more unfinished, I was like, oh, I was so gutted, And that's why
yeah.
we like sewing bee. You have your favourites. You'll get upset when Don. Well, if he goes, you never know, he might win.
Oh, let's hope.
um,
Yeah, but this is a really so she did two garments.
yeah.
She created an ensemble. She used this bias binding technique, a beautiful execution.
Mm,
The fit is very good. Um,
I know. It's sad, isn't
she
it?
deserved she deserved better.
Absolutely. But Garment of the week, as we have said, and as you probably guessed, was Ailsa with
Yes.
those
Yeah.
trousers, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
And she
Totally.
was thrilled,
Totally.
wasn't she, when she got that feedback
Ah,
from Patrick?
yeah. Yeah.
So
She loved that because I think she struggled with she struggled in the first couple of weeks, didn't she?
yes,
But that garment was just so perfectly chosen. And, she chose something that wasn't particularly difficult to execute, but because of the volume and
yeah,
the drama and the white,
yeah,
which looked so summery. And then, of course, to top it all off, it was beautifully modeled. She had the contrast of the black top, made it very crisp. And then her model had the perfect figure to show off those trousers.
a stunning make. And do you know what's really good
Win-win.
about it? As I said, inspired people to go out and make that. So on Facebook and all the sewing groups that I'm part of, they are all saying, "Where's the pattern? Where's the pattern? Where's the pattern?" So there are a lot of people hunting that pattern down. And I know on YouTube there's a channel called The Fold Line. Every week she goes through all the patterns and finds as close as
All right.
possible the commercial pattern available for each sewer make. So if you want to find out the pattern closest to what it actually is, or might even be the actual pattern, go to the
Yes.
Fold Line on YouTube. But just think of all those people who are going out now buying some
Yes.
linen fabrics.
Yeah.
I think it was
Yep.
linen.
I think it was. It might have been a linen mix. But here's
Right.
something else to think about. I wouldn't be able to wear that trouser because I'm short waisted and and I have very straight figure. But what I would do, I wouldn't say, oh, I can't wear those. I would amend the pattern so that it has a fitted yoke and it was drop waisted. And then I would introduce the pleats just slightly lower down. So it would be like having a very tall waistband, but not on the waist, from the top hip down. So
Yeah.
maybe a 4-inch yoke, and then introduce your pleats, and then have a smaller cross-cut pocket. And that would then lengthen the top of your body,
Yeah.
and it would help to control the waistline. So don't say, I can't wear those trousers. Make them suit your figure type.
There you go. Go out, buy the fabric, support the local economy, get your local yarn shop, fabric shop even, not yarn. Or if in doubt, sometimes you have to go on the internet, but that's still, that it could be a fabric company that will be welcome for your pennies. And then you buy the pattern from whoever designed it, and then you're going to be making. And that's the beauty of Sewing Bee. They've inspired people. Ailsa has inspired us. And that's why we love watching it, ultimately. When you see a
Yes.
wonderful finished garment, we go out and buy it. We want to make it, don't we?
I couldn't agree more. And like we said in the beginning, you got something that is original. Not too many other people are going to have it. You're going to make it, and it's just going to be satisfaction all around.
Let us know if you do go out and buy it, the pattern, and find it and make it. Because that's what it's all about. And getting sewing, I'm going to find another tablecloth and make a shirt or make something else. I need to make something else, actually. I might make a new gym shirt or something. But that's what we like these 10 weeks. We get inspired to get on the machine, get making and creating. I know you're doing it every day, Carol, aren't you?
And sir,
Hey?
Sir, I'm
Yeah.
going to do my own transformation challenge this week. I'm going to take a vintage kimono and I'm going to make a cocktail dress. Now, it might not be ready next week, but maybe the week after. So that I'm going to try that. No more bubble wrap. No more bubble wrap.
Oh, even wonderful. You're making all day, and then you're going to make for us in the evening. That's fabulous. I love it. Tell us in the comments what you're making, and if it's inspired you to make, whether those trousers or a tablecloth garment of some sort. It'd be lovely. Oh, it's been a wonderful show. Excuse me, I've got myself all worked up now. Thank you, Carol, as always. And we'll see
Thank you,
you
Stuart.
for week 4, which is Reduce, Reuse, Recycle week. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Carol.
Bye-bye.
Bye.